And welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. On today's episode, we're very lucky. We have a great guest, Retrospects. If you guys are not familiar with him, there's a link to his channel down in the description below. He's been on a few channels now. He has his own channel. He's definitely has a very different type of perspective when it comes to this hobby, especially when it comes to Pokemon investing and his mindset. So I think he would be a great person to have on for what is the topic of today's video. And the topic of today's video is comparing and contrasting that turning and burning mindset when it comes to Pokemon versus more of the sit back and wait and see how things play out type mindset. But before we get into that, Retro, I know you've been on other people's channels. I know you have your own channel. But in the case that some people from my channel may not know who you are, feel free to reach out and just, explain to everybody a little bit about your backstory in the Pokemon hobby and what kind of your mindset is.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, man. I've been a long time fan for sure. Been watching you for a minute now. Kind of the same story as a lot of people like got back in during the boom. It wasn't from the Logan Paul video though. It was from one of my buddies on Instagram posted that he got some Pokemon cards, and I was like, "Is that like still a thing? Like, is Pokemon still going?" And he was like, "Yeah, man." And my barber, like his best friend had just opened like an LGS or whatever, and so like I went in there, got Pokemon, and just got completely hooked, nostalgic, just started watching Leonhardt, Twice Big Jake, all those dudes. But then like everything was really expensive in the boom. So I started going down rabbit holes, looking into like other Japanese stuff like DBZ Bandai and other like Bandai Cardos stuff. So really just like having fun with all different types of cards, mainly still like, Japanese Pokemon for sure. But just kind of like having fun in cards in general. And now, yeah, I would say like my primary focus is still Japanese Pokemon, but I do dabble in some other stuff as well. So
Oh, that's cool. So what was like the first set you got back in? Do you remember it?
yeah, so it was like right when like Shining Fates, like right before the ETBs like doubled in price or whatever, and you could still kind of pick them up or whatever. But that was like the hot set with Shining Fates, and then like the first wave of Vivid Voltage before that kind of took off. I would say
Okay.
those are the first two sets I remember opening, and then like some Japanese stuff too, like Double Blaze, which I think was like a Sun and Moon. It had the Charizard Reshiram in it, so I'm not sure what the English equivalent, but I remember opening that box. So
Okay. No, that's pretty cool. I always find it amazing too, because, you're really good at absorbing information or you're just super passionate because in a relatively short amount of time in relative to the entire hobby, the 25 plus years, you've in a very small amount of time been pretty successful, especially when it comes to picking up raw cards, grading cards, figuring out what maybe is undervalued versus what's overvalued. So from your perspective, when you're looking at a card and you're especially when you're looking for something that you may think is undervalued, what are you looking for personally?
uh well, with like a lot of the Japanese stuff, especially, I look at like the English price and the pop report and say, okay, like how hard is this card to grade in English? How many are out there? Like what's the volume of sales versus the Japanese? Like one of my, I guess like first specs, I guess, was like Japanese E-series cards. And I was just looking at English prices and I was like, I mean, these cards are super expensive in PSA 10 in English, and sometimes they were like a fifth, a sixth, an eighth of the price in Japanese. So I was, picking those up around like 1 to 150 in tens. Some of the more popular Pokemon because I just felt like that was, really valuable. Some of the less popular Pokemon too, but I just really liked it. So yeah, just kind of going for that. As far as like your interest and things like that, but with the business. I would say it's more like it's more of a math problem, like it still requires the qualitative understanding, but it's kind of like a so like, like Lugia V-Star or something, right? Like the hyper rare, it's like it goes for around $25. If I'm in with grading at $18, if I'm in for like $45 a card, all said and done, I know that probably at least 80% of these are going to get tens, and then within a certain range by the time I get those cards back from PSA, like I know that they're probably going to be selling between, $85 to $150 conservatively, and you can kind of like plan things out like that. That's more the churning and burning side. I think the fun and like the passion side comes from the stuff that you're interested in and the stuff that you feel is undervalued. You know what I mean? That's more like a personal thing, I think.
Yeah. So now have you been able, because that is definitely a fine line, especially when it comes to Pokemon, that fine line of what is for sale, what is versus your collection. And then, things you might think are for sale. The more you get engaged in Pokemon, the more you start to really like grow it. I call it just a deeper appreciation for the cards or the sets or the chase or the rarity. Like you might have a card that, for all intents and purposes, you probably should sell because, maybe the market is valuing that card at a very high dollar amount, but you understand how extremely rare that card is, or you understand like the chase that was involved to attain that card because, you know, there's a reason why some of these cards are worth a lot of money, especially the more niche stuff. And especially when you're talking about Japanese cards, you could be talking some, PSA 10 pops in the 10 or less for some of these. So, then you have to start looking at that card and saying, is this a card I potentially never want to own again? And if I do own this card again, is there a chance I'm now going to have to pay a premium for this because this card might continue to go up in value? So that is that very fine line. How have you been able to kind of skirt that of like, what am I going to sell today versus what is part of my personal collection? Or are you just of the mindset that everything's for sale? It doesn't matter.
At a certain price, I guess everything's for sale, but there's some stuff that, like you said, you just have experience and I can't easily replace this. So I'm maybe not going to take the first off, especially if it's something really cool that you really like and probably a lot of other people like. I mean, you've been around for a long time, so you probably have experience of knowing price history, knowing cards that show up a lot, knowing cards that don't show up a lot. So when you get something, you can kind of be like, hey man, like, I've been around and over the past, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever, this card doesn't pop up a lot. So I'm not going to sell this on a downward trajectory, right?
Yeah.
It's a popular Pokemon, that kind of thing. So there are certain things, and you could argue, oh, maybe the smarter business move is to just kind of sell it at current market price or whatever. But there are definitely certain things. It's like, hey, I know I can't just go out and buy another one of these, even if I were to pay up for, a good quality car. Like it's just not out there. That kind of stuff I'm willing to sit on a little bit longer. And it's just kind of fun to own that stuff, right? Because it's the chase. It's like the Indiana Jones effect or something. It's like, oh, I found a cool grail and I put it in a slab, which is like the museum type thing, and I get to own it for a little bit, and that's fun. Is hunting down this rare stuff or whatever. The chase is a big part of it for me for sure.
Yeah, and what you just said there is it's fun. And I always say this to people, like if they're not enjoying what they're doing or if they're not enjoying this hobby, there's probably like better ways for people to put their, brain capacity to or maybe a little bit of their time. So, like that's the thing that's I consider like one of the best things about, more this side of Pokemon, more the invest in or the flipping side is you got to really love it. And if you don't love it, you're probably going to have a bad time. It's like that South Park episode, pizza or French fry. When you pizza, when you should have French fried, you're going to have a bad time. And I think about the same thing in Pokemon. It's if you don't really like this, you're going to have a bad time. But no, and I think so. Like the topic is the turn and burn versus the sit in and wait in. But so you kind of talked about one aspect of the sit in and wait in, and that's the cards that you've, chased after and you really think maybe are rare. And you kind of want to hold back on those until the market maybe values those the same way you do. But now there's also the other end of where a lot of people think about when it comes to sitting and waiting on Pokemon. And I think they're really thinking about sealed product too. And do you ever dabble in any sealed product or just let's just say this, what's your overall take on Pokemon sealed product? And I know that's a very open-ended question right there.
Yeah, I mean, if I was gonna do sealed product just because it's where I feel most comfortable, I'd probably buy like a case of like a Japanese specialty set. Like if V-Star Universe does a similar sort of thing that VMAX Climax did, where it gets down to like $38 to $40 a box if you're buying it by the case. I mean, that set's just packed with hits. Maybe it's not the best place to put your money, but like all things remaining equal, I could definitely, I mean, they printed a lot of VMAX Climax and those box prices are still climbing because it's a good set. Like people enjoy opening it. I don't personally do it right now, but like I'm sure that people are successful with it, especially like you said, if you love it, if you really are engaged and like Pokemon a lot, you're going to get a feel for the market and you're going to get a feel for like what sets are hot, what sets people are gravitating towards. And you might not win all the time, but like you could probably generally do okay and make good decisions on buying sealed product.
Yeah, I always think about sealed product as just it's that R word, the reprints, right? Like that is the make or break for modern product because it's the question's always going to be like, when did you get in? Did you get in on wave one, right? For pre-order prices, prices were really cheap, or you thought prices were really cheap, like a great example of a product recently that I purchased at pre-order was the Charizard UPC and bought those at $119.99. I thought that was a great dollar amount. We're starting to see sales, creep close to like $90, something that I personally didn't really think was possible. But this is the thing too. It's like if I did wait to $90, which I didn't think was going to happen, but let's just say hypothetically I did, that now becomes a sealed product play for me, where at $119.99 right at release, that wasn't a sealed product play for me. That was a rip and flip type play. So it goes to the, that earlier part of the title of this video, that turning and burning, like, but now as prices for things get cheap enough. So this is the thing. When I look at products, especially modern products, my mindset changes depending on the price of that product, So there's a lot of ETBs right now that I saw like Black Friday deals at, Target, like $24.99 for a Brilliant Stars ETB. I'm like, that's a pretty good price. Like, but that's the thing too, is there, how many people out there bought that at $39.99, just right at that MSRP price. And now they're sitting and they're watching their Brilliant Stars and they're watching their booster boxes creep up to like 160 plus, but now their ETBs are more. So the way I value product is whatever the lowest price I could purchase it at. So I don't really care the TCG player prices or the eBay prices or even Target.com or Walmart.com or Amazon or Troll and Toad. I don't care. I just look at the way, me personally, what I've been successful doing is what's the lowest price I could pick this up currently at? Because for me, that's how I value it. And yeah, you could do that arbitrage on different websites and stuff. But yeah, so do you ever, I know you say you don't look at modern product, but do you ever look at like some of this fire sale that's kind of going on right now for modern and saying this could be an entry point?
Well, what's interesting, I mean, again, it might not be the best place to type your money, but what's interesting, kind of like what you just said, the first wave for a lot of people wasn't a sealed product play. It was a rip and flip play. The celebrations UPC, because they're not grading the metal cards anymore, as far as I know. So like there's less incentive to open that product. So
Yeah.
maybe like, I'm just like, maybe the Charizard UPC like actually does better as a sealed, when we're talking about percentage of gain over time, does better than celebrations just because more people were opening it to get the promos, whereas there wasn't really the incentive with the celebrations to open and get the promos because PSA stopped grading. I don't
Yeah.
know, but $90 just seems cheap, man. Like 3 cards, 16 packs. It's good value. Like even if you just want to open it and have fun, like that's a pretty good value. Like $90 for all that stuff is not bad. So
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, and all different products, I think it just boils down to is what's the price? Like, what are you looking at stuff at? Are you looking at it at, and the crazy thing is now we have to go back. Keep in mind these Charizard UPCs, there are people out there who paid pre-order prices of like 250. Those people, thoughts and prayers to them, but like that is a real price. That's not a made up price. Or how many people like entered lotteries and stuff on different websites. Like websites were doing lotteries and stuff like buy this mystery box and then you will be entered into a lottery to pick up the Charizard UPC at, MSRP, which is, but like this is real stuff. This really did happen prior to the release. And I think the simple question that we all were asking was how many of these things are going to be printed, and Pokemon said, oh, you want to know how many of these are going to be printed? Here, hold my beer, let me show you how many we could print. And they did it, and it's exactly what we all asked for too. So it's a good thing, So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like they haven't really it again. Like, maybe I would feel different if I was a big modern sealed investor, but it doesn't really feel like they've super overprinted anything since battle styles to where like demand hasn't slowly eaten it up or like is on a trajectory to be eaten up over time.
yep,
There's a lot of the Charizard UPCs out there for sure, but I mean, dude, I remember when everybody, me included, thought Celebrations was like way overprinted, and those prices on almost all that sealed product is creeping up. You know what I mean? So
that's a great point. Yeah.
it's nuts, man. Like it's impressive. The demand is even, even with interest rates going up and recession, inflation, yada yada. Like people are still spending, people are still having a good time, and Rev is gaining subscribers. It's a good time to be around, man. Like if you can stick it out, and as like somebody new, there's less crazy up and downs. I mean, there's still the stonk channels and the top five this to invest in and all that kind of stuff. And there's probably always going to be that, but I feel like hopefully there's less people getting taken advantage of now than there was in like late 2020, early 2021. So that feels good for like the long-term potential of Pokemon and the hobby in general. So
Yeah. And you mentioned like more of the macroeconomics factor of just the world with like interest rates rising and stuff like that. And one of the topics I had on a video a few lives back was I talked about like trying to stay liquid in a potentially illiquid Pokemon market, like, and what do I mean by that is more or less like, what are you buying versus what are you selling? Are you buying things that do have that liquidity factor to it and you can still turn a profit, or are you buying stuff that you're now maybe in over your head, and then that liquidity of it now more or less becomes illiquid, with the exception of you could take a loss on it. So I think big examples of that are cards that are already graded where the grading market kind of crashes, and then buying sealed product over MSRP, and then it gets a reprint and it gets destroyed below. And in recent memory, there's a couple like huge outliers of that, like the Vivid Voltage ETB. Those things were selling for like 120. I saw sales like at $30 for Vivid Voltage ETBs. Darkness Ablaze ETBs at 120. Those things are selling, below MSRP right now. Like those things people bought, they got destroyed. And you could go back in time to, you know, Unified Minds, or yeah, Unified Minds, and then you could go back in time even before that to like Roaring Skies and stuff like that. So there are examples, or excuse me, I shouldn't say Unified Minds. I want to say oh, what was that set? That was like the fourth set. I don't know. There's a set in between. But anyways, you could go back to like Roaring Skies too, where Roaring Skies, had this crazy price increase. You had a very playable card with the Shaman, and then, everyone said like, okay, this set's not getting reprinted, and then it did get reprinted. And then so there's times in this hobby where that has happened very often. And then everybody will look at even like Evolutions right now. Everybody says Evolution $700 booster box, but yeah, you had to sit on that for 5 years to make your money. So it's that reprint that's the make or break, for a lot of this.
I think too, like with the sealed, like you can realize value. Like with the sealed, you're betting on growth and you're betting on things continuing to go your way and demand not staying constant. When you're flipping, like when you're buying raw to grade, like demand can still stay constant or even trend down a little bit and you can still win. It's more work, right? And requires more effort, but to me it's also like less risky than tying your money up in sealed product. Like it's tough because with any investment it's like previous performance is not indicative of future results and things like that. But it does seem like good sets tend to do well over time, but that doesn't mean like, oh, you're gonna outpace the S&P and this is the best place to stick like that. That's a little bit risky, like
Well,
that's a little
you
bit
run the
risky.
risk of dumps too. And what is it like a dump, but like a product dump? And we saw it very recently, luckily not in Pokemon, but like Channel Fireball, we saw, famous examples now of flesh and blood big dumps and stuff like that. And some of these other, different TCGs where we just saw massive dumps by people that had huge positions on it that people didn't really know that they had. Or you could even go, I think Mason today in Professor Oak's chat was talking about recent sales on TCG Player of Rebel Clash. Rebel Clash is not a great set. On TCG Player, that's booster box selling for like $180. In the entire month of November, the entire month, we're coming towards the end of November, there have been 7 sales of Rebel Clash booster boxes. 7. That's like 1 every 3 days. That means if I personally dumped an entire case on it on TCG Player right now, I would own like most of that market. So if you have somebody like a Channel Fireball or pretty much anybody at this point who's sitting on a couple cases of like Rebel Clash and they flood TCG Player, that market is House of Cards type market. Like it does not take much product to destroy that. When you only have 7 sales an entire month and somebody dumps, say, 5 cases, that's 30 booster boxes, and they want to make prices of 150, and then now you don't have enough demand to buy up 30, booster boxes when you didn't even have enough to buy 8. You only had enough demand to buy 7. Like that's how you could destroy that market. And that's always the fear. And like, that's what I always hope people understand. Like, but then there's probably not a lot of people. They'll just look at the price of a Rebel Clash booster box on TCG Player and say, that's the price of this box. And they won't even take into account that there is only 7 sales an entire month. Like, to me, that is not an extremely liquid asset. When you now have to be the guy that sold one of the 7 on one of the largest Pokemon selling platforms in the world. So it's just things like to take in mind. So
yeah, and it's easier, like you said, to tank a modern sealed market because Pokemon is coming out with sets like every 2.5, 3 months now. And if one set isn't moving for you, your business, you got to pay bills, and the next set's going to be good. Like you're trying to get that stuff out at whatever you can get for it, so you can get liquidity, so that you can invest, in the next set. And it's a lot easier to tank the sealed market than it would be to tank like Crystal Nidoking PSA 10, let's say, right? Like, could somebody hop on eBay, be like, I need money for Christmas, and sell it for 30-40% under recent sold? Sure. And then could somebody panic and follow that up? Sure. But at a certain point,
that's
like
one sale though.
Exactly. Like at a
that's
certain
one.
point, people are not going to be, they're like, I'm not selling just because this guy sold his Nidoking for 40% under. I'm not going to sell. It's not like that as much with modern because they're coming out with sets every 3 months. It's like, I can just buy the next set. You can't necessarily do that with like, a high grade Crystal Nidoking, right? It's way harder to tank that sort of market than it is to tank. And like the volume, like to even get 10 Crystal Nidoking PSA 10s, like on eBay that weren't on eBay yesterday at once is like, that would be insane, right? But to put 100 boxes of a modern set on TCG Player or eBay, like that's nothing,
That's nothing. So, yeah. Like, I mean, I personally have been to Football Pete's warehouse. Like, I've personally seen it. Like, the guy's named Scott. Like, dude, like moves more product. There's more stuff that he has, like, that he doesn't even know he has. I think it was like the joke that how much money like Pablo Escobar used to lose to like rats eating it. And I'm sure like this dude's probably lost like a certain amount of booster boxes just on like, maybe not rats, but like fork trucks and stuff. Like, it's just when you're moving that type of volume, it doesn't take much. It's a very, very like scary market to really be in there hard, But this is the thing, like when it comes to a modern booster box right at release, when demand's the highest, nobody with 6 cases is crushing a market. That's the thing to take in mind too. Like for Lost Origins or Silver Tempest right at release, you could probably go on eBay and see if you added up every single sale of every single seller, it's probably 10,000 booster boxes. So it's what is the market absorbing right at release versus what is the market absorbing 2 years after the fact on a set that is more or less one of the most mediocre sets of modern Pokemon, So it's just, but I'm not saying I don't own a Rebel Clash booster box either. I definitely do. I definitely have one in my collection. It's not a matter of like, I don't like it. It's just, I understand the dangers that is that. But there's also, it's a double-edged sword too. There's also the other end of the spectrum where there's never a flood of those booster boxes. The market never gets flooded with those. And then in that case, that booster box withholds its price from now until forever and potentially has a gradual, uptick. We don't know. But like for people to pretend like that's not even an example or not a possibility, it's just like chill.
Yeah, it's and a certain percentage of it is just like it's fun, right? Like it's fun. Like I like this set. I think it's a good buy at $100 or whatever you get in at, and so I'm gonna put it in my closet and see what it does. And that can be fun and that can do well for you, but it can also be harmful if you're putting all your eggs in one basket and you're saying like there's no way this could go wrong and things like that, because it's a lot easier for the supply curve to shift to the right, than it is to get the demand curve to shift to the right. So, and especially when you got people like P Football Pete out there. So yeah, I don't know, just operate with caution. And at least now, like you don't really have boxes out the gate selling for like like Vivid Voltage when that was going crazy and it was like 240 and then it retraced all the way down to like 100. I mean, it's possible, but I think it's less likely that, or yeah, it's not the opposite of more likely than not. It's less likely that Evolving Skies, even if it got hit with a reprint, I'd be really surprised to see that box at $100.
It would take a lot.
It would take a lot, like Brilliant Stars maybe, or some of the other sets, but it would take a lot of supply to knock those boxes down to like $100, but
yeah, and that's what
investment advice. So.
Oh, and you're right. And it comes to this speculative game of just speculating what is Pokemon going to reprint, because you could go back in time not too long ago. We could remove ourselves just 2 years, go back to 2020. In 2020, what reprints were still on the table? Team Up, Unbroken Bonds, Unified Minds, Cosmic Eclipse, Big Time. All those were very much on the table of reprints. Cosmic Eclipse was the last set of Sun and Moon, and Sword and Shield Base was the first set of there's nothing in between. So like the window of time is definitely possible. So that's it. It's speculation, right? So
I feel like the singles almost are, I mean, and those fluctuate quite a bit too. And like some of the alt arts start out cheap and then get crazy and then drop back down again. But I feel like the singles are probably a better place to stick your money. Like I'd rather spend $100 on V-Star Universe singles than buying 2 boxes of it or whatever. Like I think you're going to be able to do more with that $100 just buying the singles outright rather than sitting on the boxes and hoping for future price appreciation. So
yeah. The way I look at modern singles is anything that I think is has what I consider good fundamentals. So good character, good art, because those are the 2 things I have to look for modern, because I'm not looking for like scarcity or rarity to it. You can say what you want, like I get it. These alternative arts, maybe to some people they consider them rare and scarce. Like I personally, like my mindset doesn't let me get to rare and scarce for a lot of modern. So I look for, like good artworks and good characters. So I think characters like a Pikachu and like a full art card, like for me, that says, okay, this is a nice modern card. This is a card that some people are going to want to have in a slab. But I do not look at those cards as cards I want to sit on. Those are cards I look at as extremely, first of all, they're extremely liquid for the most part. Graded, modern, cool looking cards are extremely liquid right now in this market. And especially in 10s with modern print quality, I'm pushing those things out the door as fast as I possibly can. But it doesn't mean that I don't like that card. It's just so cards like that, a super modern card that there's a lot of, I look at it this way. I'm going to have other chances in the future to own that card again. And given enough time, if I really like that card enough, there will probably come a point in the future where I'll then own that card in a PSA 10. But right now, today, that's not the case. It's revolving door. So
yeah, well, and it's crazy, man. Like I was looking earlier and not even the hyper rare, so not even the rainbow Charizard V-Star from Brilliant Stars is like an $80 PSA 10. You know what I mean? So it's like you said, if it's popular Pokemon. You know, it's not even the highest rarity in the set, and it's still I don't even know what that card is on TCG Player, but probably 10-15 bucks or something. So like you're doubling your money after 18. Like that's crazy, man, you know, but
So
it's Charizard, so
so you said Charizard V-Star from Brilliant Stars, right? So my son, he's only like a year and a half, but he opened his first Charizard 2 days ago. And this was a card he pulled on my lap.
let's
Yep.
go. Hell yeah.
So my wife was there. I only had 2 packs because I got a recent delivery from Pokemon Center because trust me, I'm getting my special delivery Charizard codes as much as I can, and just a box came in, and 2 of the packs were Brilliant Stars. So we opened it up. He was sitting on my lap, and this was the card that obviously he's a baby, but we opened it together, and this is his first ever Charizard. So
Hell yeah, that's a good pull, man. That's a good pull.
yeah.
Did you get the are you buying the 3-pack like blisters or whatever when you do the code, or
So
what
I
are you
buy
going?
one 3-pack blister. It doesn't really matter the set right now, and then 2 single-pack blisters that are like the 3.99 ones, and it brings my total up to like $20 and like 79 cents. So like
Like
puts me
just over.
just
Okay.
over that
That's
threshold.
good.
And
That's good.
you know, right now so I think the 3-pack blister was Brilliant Stars for this one. So I was able to pull a Charizard. But no, it was fun, man. And he was sitting on my lap. And so, but first, when I handed him the card, he took the pack like this and he had it with both his hands and he just like bent it right in half with it. And then I like grabbed it real quick. And I'm like, there's probably not going to be anything in here. And then we opened it up. I saw like, the black outline of the code card, but that's his first ever Charizard he pulled. So I'll have it graded and then it'll just go into his personal collection. And that's a card that in the future, that card could be worth $1 million. And I don't care because it's not for sale, or it could be worth $1. And it doesn't matter because it's his first Charizard. It probably means more to me than him, but it doesn't matter. Like that card's very special now. So
Yeah, man, that's cool. It'll be cool to see like if everything's still rocking and rolling 10-15 years from now, like your kid, like how they like Pokemon, like Z and G. I know he's keeping some cards for like it'll be interesting, 15 years from now, if these kids just get gifted like sauce, you know what I mean? Like that would be crazy to see for sure.
yeah. So I've already done that. I've started putting stuff away. And one of the things I'm doing is one of every booster box that comes out, just one. So from the time he's been born to now, every single booster box that has been released, I've just put one away. It's not, no, not one of every product, not one booster box, one ETB, one 3-pack. It's just one booster box. And then anytime he has like crazy milestones, I'll take like a random slab and just kind of put it away for him. And every slab I put away is 9 or higher. So 9 when it comes to vintage, or 10 if it comes to modern. There's not really any modern plays in there right now. It's mainly just like right now. I'm not gonna lie, it's like the extra vintage stuff I have. So he has some pretty cool cards as it stands, and who knows what they're worth in the future. And then worst case scenario is Pokemon's all worth nothing. Everything becomes junks, like junk wax, like in the 90s baseball. And then we'll just sit there together one day and we'll open it all and I'll have a good story for him. Hey, this is a big waste of money.
I don't know, man. I mean, like I'm pretty bullish on just like cards in general. I think even if like Pokemon died in like five, as far as like started or stopped producing like modern sets, I still think that there would be like a secondary. I don't know. I feel like there would have to be a pretty big exodus of interest out of cards in general. Like it's hot right now, even with the retraces, man. And I don't know, like
Retrace is subjective too, it's like,
yeah, a lot of things are going up, dude. Like
yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of cards that like, especially like worlds cards are really popping right now. Like certain full arts are like ripping. A lot of the like the waifu trainer stuff is going crazy. So a lot of stuff is on the trek back up. I think it's more like the low hanging fruit, easy, obvious plays that are more getting kind of destroyed as far as like margins go. So
They are, and then they're not, like they are, but then you have special delivery Charizard. So they are, but they're not. So
I mean, it's
you
it's
have,
funny. So I was gonna send a bunch. I bought because I did it with Pokemon Go with the V-Star Dragon. I bought a bunch of those, sent to
Mhm.
CGC, played the, the Perfect 10 lottery or whatever. And so then with, I think it was in Japanese, it's called like Incandescent Arcana or whatever, but the Vulpix V-Star Rainbow or whatever, I was like, Vulpix is pretty popular Pokemon. The card's like $5-6. I bought a bunch of those. I was gonna send them to CGC, but I checked the PSA pop report. It's pop 8. And I was like, no one is making this play, dude. This is such an obvious play, but like it's almost like so obvious no one's making it. So I'm sending like 20 or 30 of those off the PSA because I'm like, dude, it's pop 8. There's
Yeah.
no way that like another 20 or 30 people don't want this card. Like, yeah, man, I don't know. I feel like people are so focused on the alt arts and the expensive stuff, but
Mhm.
people want like 75 to $100 tens of like good looking modern cards. So
Yep. I got a couple character rares that I've been just kind of doing that play with, man. And it's not flashy, but you would be surprised. Like I sold some character rares that are valued at like $4 to $5 for over $100 in a PSA 10. And it might sound ridiculous, but percentage wise, there's like a ton of money to be made there. But I've also sent some of those character rares and got like 9s and 8s. But when you hit that 10, it just boom. But
yeah, yeah, especially like in person too, like having that kind of stuff in like a case at a
oh
collecticon at accessible prices. Like people love that stuff, you
yeah.
know?
And one of the so I didn't really help Nick out. I probably was bothering more than I was helping him. But I was sitting next to Nick, old school Pokemon. He had two cases, and I was like kind of sitting in front of one. And I had multiple girls come up to me, and I asked them like, "What's your favorite Pokemon? What's your favorite set?" And more than one time, somebody said to me, "I don't really care about the Pokemon or set. I just like Pokemon that are cute." And I don't think that's a bad answer. I don't. I think that's actually like a fine answer. But it got me kind of thinking in my head like a different way. Like there are people out there that don't really care. They just want cute artwork. And then instantly in my head, like I start running through all these different cute artworks. And I mean, that can be a play. And maybe that's not a, stonk out play. Like I think that's what everybody's looking for. They're looking for that get rich. Like I'm going to buy this card at 500. I'm going to sell it for 1,000. Those plays almost never, if ever, happen. So realistic expectations for a lot of people. But so I don't know how comfortable you are, but talking about some of your buys, but I know at Collecticon you had a pretty awesome purchase there. Are you willing to talk about that? Or do you want to just keep that on the DL for a bit?
Yeah, man, it was super exciting. Like, I don't know, to be able to close that deal, that was awesome. And I recently got the grades back and they graded really well. So it was a fun experience, man. Like,
Are you willing to share what they were? You want to?
yeah, so I bought a full set of 2019 Champions Festival unstamped all the languages, and then I bought two 2019 top 16 stamps. Those both got 9s. And then I bought a 2019 top 32 and that got a 10. So that
Oh,
was
nice.
awesome.
That's
Um,
sweet.
yeah, so I'm really excited about that. And then I bought some 2022 stuff from the same guy, but that's still at PSA right now. So yeah, man, like I'm hyped. That's awesome. Like to grade top 16s and top 32s in high grades was pretty cool. And to just like the first Collecticon, like first really big show. I've been to local shows and stuff, but like first big show to be able to pick up like stamped Worlds cards,
Mm.
it's just an awesome experience, man. Like that, I don't know. I felt really like blessed and grateful. That was such a good weekend. I mean, meeting you, meeting everybody in person, it's a lot better, like seeing what everybody's like in person and like seeing the genuine like passion and like networking and making friends. Like, yeah, I highly recommend everybody to try to get out to one of these events, man, because people are great. So
Yeah, it definitely meeting people in person, it puts it in like this hobby into like a different perspective too. And you understand that because for me personally, like before I made this channel, more often than not, I felt like I was kind of more or less alone in this hobby, or you don't really have a lot of like-minded people around you. Because I don't know about you personally, but like me personally, there are almost no one in my personal life that I could reach out to and like talk about Pokemon, and definitely not talk about Pokemon on this sort of level, like the real deep dive talking about, like top 32 cards and stuff like that's that's a pipe dream for me. Forget about it. But I do want to just go back real quick. Can you tell us a little bit about how did you find those cards? Was it just, did you know that somebody had them, or you just got super lucky? You walked by a booth, you saw them. Like, walk us through, because I'm sure for a lot of people out there have never really had an example in their entire collecting journey where they were able to pick up, Worlds cards directly in person. Like, that alone is a pretty awesome story. And just like bring us through your feelings and your emotions doing that.
Yeah, so it was actually nice to be able to get them in person, because the thing with Worlds cards is the quality control is not great. The cuts are kind of suspect sometimes, and that's why like it's not as easy to get them in tens, even like the unstamped ones, like fresh out of the packs. So to be able to see them in person and like assess the quality and condition in person was big. At one point DNA kind of said he would take over the booth. We were kind of sharing a table and stuff, so I took my backpack, started walking around. I found this guy's table, and he had like a whole section, and I was buying like a bunch of modern singles from him. I mean, he had like Celebrations Charizard, Shiny Charizard VMAX. So I was looking through, finding all the best centered ones without whitening, being like, hey, can I buy these 20, blah blah blah, let's make a deal. And he had Worlds cards, but initially like he was like wanting a little too much from him. I was like, oh, you're kind of you're kind of pricey with them. But I had bought from him like a couple times throughout the day. And so then on Sunday, I had some money left. I was like, I really want to get these. Like, I'm gonna go over and make this happen. Went over there with Rock Pokemon. He's shouts out to Rock Pokemon. He's a really cool dude. Was glad to meet him in person. Went over there, talked to the dude, made him a cash offer, and he accepted. And it was freaking awesome, man. I was stoked. So yeah, it was a great feeling for sure. Walked up to Dan, was so excited. I was like, Dan, check these out. And Dan was like, I'll give you $50 over what you paid. I was like, get out of here, man. But it was fun.
Yeah. But no, it's that's gonna be one of those like purchases you're probably gonna remember from now until forever. You always remember like that purchase, and that Denver Collecticon is already very special for a lot of people that attended, but now you have that story too. So
Yeah, and it's like for a lot of people that are kind of like wondering if you can kind of like hustle at a convention. I would say it's a lot more prevalent in the sports YouTube space, especially like if you watch dudes like Roth Cards or Kenny Fornos. Card show vlogs are like a big deal, and a lot of these dudes will go from show to show, like every other weekend or whatever, and that's their business, is buying, selling, trading. And I feel like people aren't doing that as much in Pokemon, but especially in person. Cash is king, and there's opportunity. I mean, I know you picked up a lot of good stuff for really good deals, and when you have the knowledge, like that's another thing too, is like part of the reason there's so much arbitrage and opportunity in collectibles markets. Like in finance, things get optimized down to like the tiniest, like fraction of a percentage instantly, because computers are running these algorithms and can adjust for interest rates fluctuations and all different types of stuff. But in Pokemon and cards, like it's knowledge. Like you picked up the no symbol Jolteon, right, for like a half of what it should have gone for. Like you can't do that with the computer. You have to do that with knowledge and experience, and that's part of the reason that there's arbitrage opportunities, and potential money to be made, is because of the time and effort and energy that you put into understanding the market. So
yeah. Well, that no symbol Jolteon, I handed to Zach Gemmint Pokemon the second I had it. But yeah, it was and it was funny because the guy who had it in his booth, he had it priced as unlimited, and then I like haggled them down to half the price of it. But yeah, it's just, but that's the thing too, is, and I don't want to like beat this horse, he's already dead, but there's probably not as many people that are as super engaged in this hobby. So I think there's just a wide range of different collectors or investors in this hobby. And in order to really find those good deals, you have to instantly be able to like identify if a card is overvalued or undervalued without, and sometimes you don't really have the ability to pull your phone out and start pulling up comps and stuff like that too, because especially when you're dealing with raw cards, you could throw comps out the window. Like all I care about at that point is the condition of the card, because I already know the price in my head of what this card's worth. But now I need to look at the condition because that's going to be the true end all be all on the final price. If I see a card there's very few times, but when they do happen, when you say, wow, because that condition of that card is freaking awesome. And you like stop and you take a double look, you're like, there's no way. And when that happens, you go, oh my God, like I have something here. Let me ask this guy what he wants. And then sometimes you just pay asking, you don't even want to like lose that seal. But then you can pick up the same card, but the condition's a 6 because you see some ding or something. And then you're like, nope, I'm going to walk away. Like, thank you, but it's just not worth it for me because the headache. So there's that part of it too. And one of the things you deal with a lot is you're dealing with a lot of different, collectors, especially through like Jake's Pokenomics Discord. I know you're good friends with like Colson and a lot of these guys who are really dabbling in some more niche stuff. Definitely Colson is, a man for my own heart, like, because he's going after, black and white era. He is going after Japanese black and white. So we are at least removed in language barriers. But, so when you are talking to everybody else, like what are some of the things that you're seeing people do? And it doesn't even have to be like their individual plays. It could just be like mindset. How do you feel that a lot of people are just tackling the hobby right now with, a little bit of downtrends and stuff like that?
I would say like, well, first of all, like what's the saying, like steel sharpens steel, right? Like when you're hanging out with people and you're talking to people that are hustling, that are always trying to get better, that are always trying to, do new things and grow their businesses and get better at what they do, like that's a net positive for you. One thing I'll say is like everybody in the Spicy Boys has branched out and learned something else, right? So like Colson's done a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh. Colson's doing like the black and white, that's X and Y stuff. That's not stuff that like everybody is doing, right? Like he's doing Weiss, like Charvy's doing Weiss. Kai has done comics and DBZ and all this. So being able to be flexible, like the flexible tree survives the storm, right? Like I I said it on like another podcast, but like this thing stood out to me that Warren Buffett said it at the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting, and he was basically saying that like skill sets can't be inflated away, right? Like this girl had asked a question like, what types of companies are going to survive like an extreme inflationary period? And he was saying like skill sets like are moats. Skill sets can't be inflated away. So if your whole business is just one thing and just one type of card, like that to me is not a recipe for success, right? I mean, look at like even Dan and Rusty and all these people, like Rusty's done Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh and all sorts of different types of stuff. So being able to make plays in a lot of different ways on a lot of different items and a lot of different IPs, that's important. And learning a different market can teach you more about Pokemon and help you look at Pokemon in a different way, right? Like how, if you just see Pokemon and how cards are evaluated through like a Pokemon lens and like the SM Prats and the Pokenomics and all that stuff, like you might only be getting like the Pokemon the lens, right? Like, but if you watch a sports channel and like, okay, well, why do people value these cards this way in sports versus in Pokemon? So yeah, kind of a rant, but I just feel like the more knowledge, like the better, like keep doing different stuff. Don't just stay doing the same thing over and over, I guess.
Do you feel that, diving deep down the YouTube or the Pokemon rabbit hole has really helped you to branch out? Have you taken like a lot of things you've learned from Pokemon, especially probably just through eBay and all that stuff? And I don't know if I saw Josh or the Green Shiz in the chat, but I know he was talking about like Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And one of the things he talked about, he's talking about some prices and some of the prices for, that mid-era stuff, which is like the 2006 timeline. For us, 2006 timelines bring us to like Nintendo sets, we're talking Unseen Forces and Delta Species and your Crystal Guardians and your Dragon Frontiers and your Howling Phantoms. Like that brings you right around that 2006 timeline. And prices for booster boxes like that are extremely high. And just Pokemon in general, when it comes to more vintage stuff, especially the sealed product, prices are crazy. So when I was looking at some of this Yu-Gi-Oh, what I would consider like the same timeline, and prices are pitiful, like for something from 2006. And then it got me looking at it. I'm like, I don't need Dragon Frontier type box price increases. I only need like very low box price increases to make some of these plays for me. So I think, but that could be a detriment too, because I'm looking at things like you said from a Pokemon lens, where now I'm looking at a timeline of a set of a card game that I don't even know. I don't know the playable cards. I don't know like the major chases. So I could be like hurting myself just because it works in a different timeline, and because I watched one DeGreen Shiz video where he talked about like those sets being fun, and like that's about the extent. So
Yeah, well, the one thing I would say is like you're gonna do best. It's a little bit different with sports because there's constantly like new rookie classes coming out. Anybody can, follow a player from college, to the pro leagues, watch all their games, check the stats, blah, blah, blah. With Pokemon and with a lot of these like, anime-based IPs and things like that, you need to understand the qualitative just as much as the quantitative. So you need to understand why like Charizard is important or Pikachu is important or Rayquaza or whatever. Like you need to be able to understand that. And with Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't know as much as Green Shiz does. I would imagine I know that Duel Monsters, which is like kind of like the base set or like the first generation of Yu-Gi-Oh, like that's what's most popular. Middle generation is still kind of popular, but it's not popular the same way it is in Pokemon. Like I would, and I could be way off on that, but that's just like my gut check. Why the boxes would be priced that way is because it's not quite like I would say Ruby and Sapphire is probably more popular in Pokemon than like the GX era is. Maybe not playability as much, but like more people know Blue Eyes White Dragon, which is like first generation, than Stardust Dragon or the middle generation type stuff. So that would just be kind of like my gut feeling on that. But it's important to understand the qualitative. Like it's important to know like why am I buying this character? Because I remember watching him beat up this bad guy as a kid or whatever. And
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like that is important. So
Yeah, no, I stay away from mainly things that are extremely expensive, but like I dabble in all types of random TCGs, So a lot of it's just to like own one of stuff. I'm a big guy when it comes to stuff like for Pokemon. If I understand Pokemon, like I want to own more than one of stuff. But for stuff I don't really understand so much, or just kind of a one-off play, especially when it comes to like dead TCGs, I want to own one. I'll own one Quidditch cup. Screw it. Like I'll spend $100 and own it, and I don't really know like if that's a lot or if that's a little, but I'll own one. And
and a
that's
lot of
I'm not
it's
even a
like,
Harry Potter fan, so
oh really?
no.
Okay, okay, yeah,
Like
I
I've
like
I've
Harry
watched the
Potter.
movies, but like I was never big into the books or anything. So
Yeah, I mean, like cards are fun, man. It is kind of crazy to me. Like I remember way back, like watching, when like Swami would be on Pokenomics or like Radar would be on there, and they would talk about other stuff. And there was so many people that would be like, I don't want to hear about this. Like, I just want to talk about Pokemon. And it was crazy. It was like, y'all don't like other cards. Like, y'all aren't interested in other cards. Like, it is funny to me that so many people are still stuck on one thing. It's like, dude, there's so much cool, fun stuff out there. I feel like if it's not Weiss, if it's not Yu-Gi-Oh, if it's not Magic, there's got to be something out there that almost everybody could potentially like other than Pokemon, or maybe that's just me. Like I like cards. Cards are fun, man. So I'm down for almost almost anything. Not Magic so much. I can't really do Magic, but yeah.
yeah. So my most recent live, I had Joe Echo Base Collectibles on, and we talked about the Magic the Gathering 30th anniversary set, and I think that's very much in the news right now. Well, when I say the news, I mean let's just call it what it is. Like Rudy is going crazy right now, talking about that, pumping out some pretty banger content. But do you have any thoughts on like that whole Magic the Gathering 30th anniversary, like what how the markets reacting to it, how the players reacting to it, and do you think, because I did ask him the same question, do you think we could ever see a similar sort of product in Pokemon? Like that super high end?
It's like and again, like I'm not the most qualified to speak on Magic or whatever, but just from an outsider's perspective, The main thing that's tough is that they specifically said we will not do this, and that's kind of something that like makes Magic special, is it has that reserve list, right? Like I don't think that there's really another thing like that in any other TCG where there's like the company sets a precedent, like we will absolutely not reprint these, and that builds like a confidence in your collector base and your player base. And then for you to kind of go back on that, that is what's the issue, right? Like nobody's mad at a company for making money or trying to like exploit their 30th year anniversary, but it's just the way they went about it. It's just like, ooh, like that's kind of rough, right? Because like when you think about Black Lotus, it's like that might be one of the most historical, if not the most historical, like TCG cards of all time. And so for you to just kind of like reprint that after saying you absolutely would never do that, it just doesn't, it's not a good look in my personal opinion. But again, I'm not a Magic player, so people might have a different opinion and be more educated. So
So the second half of my question was, do you think Pokemon could ever put out like that high class premium type set? Because I mean, realistically, the most premium type sets we get are 120, you know?
yeah, I mean, I think Pokemon is doing really, really well. Like when you're so engaged and you're watching Pokemon content every day, and it's a big part of your life, you're constantly brainstorming like they could do this and they could put all three, evolutions on the same card and make an alt art out of it, and that would be bad. Like you're constantly coming up with these ideas for things you would like to see. But like bottom line, Pokemon's doing a pretty good job, all things considered. And I think they're going to continue to do that moving forward. They have so many options. I've heard Dan say it, I've heard you say it, like they have so many options of things they could do before they would ever need to get to even like serialized cards.
Yeah.
If I were somebody at the Pokemon company seeing what autographs have done, I think it would be really cool if they started including sketch cards. I think that would be really, really cool. I think a lot of people would love that. I think that they could put that in a premium type product and that would do really well. But there's just so much cool stuff, man, that they could do. And modern's hot right now. So yeah, I don't think that I don't think they would go back and use WotC style printing and reprint like base set first edition or anything like that. That doesn't feel like Pokemon to me. I feel like Evolutions is probably the closest thing you'll ever get to that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I think when it boils down to for something like that is Pokemon doesn't have a reason to go back and reprint like a true one-to-one reprint. Like there's no need. And yeah, like you said, with evolutions, like it doesn't make sense. But like I would like to see a Celebrations S type product where maybe like they reprinted, like it doesn't even have to just be Neo Genesis, like the base set. It could be, Neo Destiny or Neo Discovery, or just like a mix match of all those, or do like a Gym Heroes, Gym Challenge type set where you have like both of those sets, or even do like an e-reader where you got like Expedition, Aquapolis, Skyridge all in the same set, and you kind of just pick and choose your best cards. And you could take the Nidoking and the Kingdra and the Lugia from Aquapolis, and then maybe add it with the Charizard or the Celebi or the Ho-Ho, or or like the Golem or the Kabutops. Like you could add it with those and like take a couple crystals, put it in, and make like a very specialty set there. And I think you would get a lot of people to start to look at the older stuff too, like, oh, that's pretty cool, I didn't know this existed, or oh, that's pretty awesome that I can now acquire this at an affordable price. Like I'll put a great example of a card that's a super modern card that I actually like wanted to grade myself in a 10 and I graded it at 9, was just the Umbreon from Pop Series 5. But they came out in Celebrations. The Umbreon was my personal chase, and I just was unlucky and I wasn't able to grade it in 10. So now I have to go. That's like on the back burner of things I need to do, but like now I got to pick up some raw cards and start sending them away for grade until I hit my 10. So but no, yeah, Kevin Clear said sketch cards could bust that 10K a card barrier, definitely. Especially if you have like a 1-of-1 sketch Arita Charizard signature card. Like the market wouldn't even know how to price that thing. It would be like that would be like when you get your Dubsy Collects type buyer comes in and just spends like $1 million, and you're just like, whoa, you just value that card like a 20x what anybody else is valuing it. So
Because I don't know, like a full art like sketch card. I mean, I don't know, like for people that aren't as familiar, like you can check out Marvel or Star Wars sketch cards or whatever to kind of get an idea. But there's so many different types to do, just from like raw pencil to I mean, and it gives you, it's kind of cool because a lot of the cards, like you can literally feel on the card like where the pen went like too much into the, like it's, I don't know, man. Like that to me is like a really special piece to get something that was physically hand drawn by the artist. Like if people are paying thousands and thousands for the autographs and like a tiny little 15-second sketch, imagine like a beautiful full, cardstock set. Like that would be crazy. But they don't even need to do that, right? Because
yeah,
like Lugia's butt is out here selling for $600 or whatever it is.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. I mean, just think of like a card like this. Ken Sugimori hasn't done like a signature sign in like close to a decade, right? But let's say he does his original base set Blastoise artwork. It's a 1 of 1. He signs that card. It's a true Pokemon insert. It's got a Pokemon back with that card would go insane. Like you can't be the biggest Blastoise collector in the world and not have that card. You can't be the biggest Charizard collector and not have the Misherita 1 of 1 Charizard. It's like, but that's going to be the thing. It would push the market to almost like a breaking point in a way. And it would price out a lot of people too, which would be like a huge negative. But then it would also be a positive in the sense where the chase would still be there because modern Pokemon is not expensive. Like when it boils down to it, Pokemon modern, at least in the sealed product route, is not expensive. You can pick up a booster box for $100 of more or less like the last 4 sets released by Pokemon. And if you really want to go like just single pack route, you could pick up packs as low as like $2.50. Yeah, you don't get the premium of it being in a booster box, but like you could just pick up loose packs sometimes for $2.50. And then if you want to go to retail, you creep up to $3.99. $3.99 is not like a huge barrier of entry for most people. And if $4 a pack is a barrier of entry, you're listening to the wrong channel, like some of the stuff we talk about. So
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. Like it's a strong time, and I know people are so worried about like how much of it is like genuine demand versus speculation, but I'd go out on a limb to say that now I personally feel more confident that the demand and interest in Pokemon, a larger percentage of it is like genuine than just financially investment focused than was the case in early 2021, late 2020. Like people like this stuff, people are having a good time. A lot of stuff is affordable prices. Like you said, you can open boxes of like the last 4 sets for 100, but like that's healthy. You know what I mean? That's healthy. And on the other side of it, if you do end up hitting a chase card, like these chase cards are selling for healthy premiums too. So like that feels like a healthy market. But who really knows? But it does feel like demand is strong. It feels like people are having a good time. Yeah, it feels like a lot healthier than it did. So
Skater Nesto's in the chat right now. I don't know if he's trolling you or not, but he said, question for retro. What do you personally reckon is the best retro video game? Are you into the video game market, or is he just trolling you because you're probably not?
well, I did send some stuff off to Wada just to like try and see like what happened. So shouts out to ZNG Emporium for helping me out with that one. But I don't know, man. Best retro video game, that's tough. Probably like Ocarina of Time. I would say like Ocarina of Time or Mario 64 are pretty hard to beat. I don't know. Like those are just the two that come to my head. Plus, it's also like what's retro. Like Super Smash Bros. Melee is also like one of the most amazing games of all time. But I don't know if that's retro. That was probably like elementary or middle school for me. So
Fair enough. Kevin Clare said, what's the cheapest anyone got the Halloween cards a pack for? So I don't know if you follow Pokemon TCG drops on Instagram, but he posted somebody was doing a like right after Halloween, they do kind of a fire sale of like all their Halloween product, and that was one of them. And it was 2 packs you get 40 packs per bundle for $15. So it works out to be like 20 cents a pack. So I would say that that's probably the cheapest anybody found them at. And 20 cents a pack is that's a pretty nice price for, I don't care that there's 3 cards in it. Have you seen like black and white sample packs lately? Black and white sample packs sell for like $19.99. And that is 2 crappy black and white base set cards in it. So they exist. So if
What
you
are
got,
the hits out of the Halloween? Is it just a hollow, or is there anything like really
they're
nice in
like,
there?
they have like a little Pikachu stamp on it. It's like a Pikachu head, but it looks like a pumpkin, but it's a Pikachu head. I don't know. I I take a lot of like Rusty's advice, or at least the moves that Rusty is doing. And Rusty said he picked up some to just kind of stick away in a closet for a couple of years. And I'm gonna go, I'm gonna just put it out on a limb there and said Rusty's had a pretty decent track record of picking up some pretty good buys over his time. And if anybody out there doesn't believe it, like I recommend you guys just going and looking at some of his videos he's been releasing lately, where he shows all his Black Star promos. Dude was picking up like bricks of Bumblebee Pikachu number 27 by the hundreds, and every single Pokemon movie promo he could get his hands on, and every ancient Mew, and those are cards that people did not want. Nobody wanted, first movie promos and stuff. So he was picking cards up like that, and he had a foresight for a lot of that stuff that I think a lot of people sometimes are lacking, especially when it comes to like promos. Like some people get their one promo and they're happy and they're like, I don't need any more. And Rusty was just like, no, I just got a buy price. I'm just going to keep acquiring my promos. I'm going to stick them in this, 5-row monster box, and we'll see what they do in 5-10 years. And
Yeah, I mean, like one of the main things that I kind of regret. I mean, like as soon as it opened, I went hammer. But when like 18 opened, I didn't have 1,000 cards ready to go, and I was so used to grading stuff at like 30 to 50, and so I was buying cards that made sense at 30 to 50.
mm,
And there's a lot of stuff looking back on it that I sold raw that would have been worth it to grade. So, like you said, having that foresight is important. And I mean, dude, there's a lot of stuff that Rusty grades that, I mean, I've seen him grade like modern reverse hollow Espeons and stuff like that. And people will be like, well, why would you grade that? It's like somebody out there wants that. And if nobody else is going to be the guy to do it, Rusty's going to be the guy to do it. Right. And at volume, that kind of stuff pencils. It goes back to like the Vulpix thing earlier. It's like, can you sell 5,000 of those? No, maybe not. But like, at a certain price, like you said, picking up the bricks of the promos, it's like, look, if I'm in these at $2 to $3 all day, and I'm, waiting, being patient till grading specials of $15 come around, and I'm in it under $20 a card, there's no way I don't get at least $30 to $40 out of this card.
mhm.
You know what I mean? He's able, because he has so much experience, he's seen the market ups and downs, he knows what people like, he knows what people don't like. He's able to make those kinds of plays, and there is like some risk, but like any business buying inventory has risk, right? Like I'm sure Albertsons has a certain percentage of carrots that go rotten every week or month or whatever. You know what I mean? So not
Oh
every
yeah.
play is going to work out, but like over time, if you're staying engaged and making good buys, like you're going to do well. So
Yeah. And he'll be the first one to tell you that he has probably like drawers and drawers and boxes full of cards that he wasn't able to move to, but it just works out that his plays in the long run were, better than the other ones. Like, and there's some crappy products that I thought existed, but he proved that those products were really great. And one of them was the what is it, like the battle stadium, like the square boxes they have them in Targets and Walmarts. They never sell out. They came with like a Charizard promo in there, like a Raichu and a Gyarados or something. He was buying as many of those as he possibly could, and he graded all of his Charizards. Dude cleaned up. He said he couldn't keep them in stock on his eBay store. He said he would send away like 20 at a time. He would get 20 back, and he would list all 20, and then people would just buy them out. They would just whittle them down to zero. And then he was getting to a point where now he was like trying to get these faster, because all he was doing was just cannibalizing these products down. And that doesn't include all like, like there's still money in just the bulk cards, and then still the Raichu and the Gyarados. Like, but he was just printing money. He was selling those things for like $39.99 to buy that thing for MSRP is like $19.99. His price through distributor was probably like 10 to 15, maybe 10, dude was just printing but that's just one little play and that's the thing too, and that's the thing that I hope to someday get to. And I'm sure you probably hope to get to is like get to scale, right? Where that's just one play when you got 100 plays moving at all times, and you got 100 plays, and then you sell a handful per day. And like one of the huge examples I could give is the Mew, the non-hollow Mew. It's Black Star promo number 8. Rusty freaking graded most of that pop. And he moves through those things are on his eBay store right now at $59.99. Dude's been moving through those things slowly for the last couple years. His price is like $1 a card. And all those cards got graded at like $7, $8. Means he's into those cards for less than 10. And he's been moving those cards in the hundreds for the last couple years. You know how much money that is? That is a ridiculous amount of money. And he probably only sells like one a day or a couple a week, but he could care less.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it too. It's like it's like when Dan talks about the coins, like grading the coins or whatever. It's low things kind of work themselves out, right? Like the lower liquidity, like potentially not always, but usually like you're gonna get a higher margin. It's just gonna take a little bit longer to sell. And then like things that are extremely liquid, like modern or whatever, like you might not 8x your money or whatever, but you're still doubling your money. And like at scale, you kind of have to make, I don't want to say you have to make every play, but it's not enough to just be like, this is what I like doing, I'm just going to do this. Like at a certain point, you can only do a certain amount or of what you like, right? Like you can't infinitely source like crystal Nido Kings, right? Like I would love if I could just do that all day, like that would be amazing, but I can't do that, right? So like I am grading like hyper rare Lugia V stars and Charizard V stars and stuff like that, and gold cards and Yu-Gi-Oh and doing a lot of different things, because to get to scale, you have to be doing a lot of different stuff. You can't just, I think a lot of the time, like people look at like a Rusty or a Gem Mint or a Charlie, and they're like, oh, they look at them and they see like their biggest card, right? Like maybe it's a trophy card in a 10 or whatever. It's like, but that's not their business. Their business is not their biggest card. Their business is the $20 profit, the 20 to 30% profit. And that's most businesses in America, right? Operate on a 10 to 30% profit margin, just do it at such volume. So yeah, man, Rusty's killing it for sure. And he seems like a genuinely good guy. He's never in like drama, never has a bad word to say about anybody. No one ever has a bad word to say about him. Dude's just crushing it. You know what I mean? Has a great family and all that sort of stuff, and is just living his best life. So it's awesome to see. Like kudos to him. Shouts out to him for real.
Yeah, living the dream too. But that dream, that he made that dream a reality too. So that shows that hard work pays off, and also shows that you got to believe in stuff too. His PC is at a very high level that a lot of people can't comprehend. And the one example that I always bring up is there are a million people out there who wish they could just own one jungle booster box, just one, and they can't. Rusty owns the jungle booster box variant collection, meaning the difference is like the date and the country code on the bottom of the box. And I think he's up to like 6 or 7 different variants of jungle booster box. Do you know what level you need to get to become a jungle booster box variant collector? Like, sure, we could think of like the big ones like first edition, then regular base, and then maybe like the Australian orange version, but like remove those, there's probably not a lot of people out there could name you what the other 3 or 4 variants even are, because it's as different as European codes and stuff. That is a very different type of collector.
Yeah, but like you said, I mean, his success is a function of his effort and his input, right? I mean, like he's worked hard, and like he says stuff I've heard him say in different streams, like when you go out, don't get soda, like don't be spending extra. And like a lot of people are just like, like what is $5 here, $10? It's like that's a card that you could have graded. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? You do that 100 times, like that's 100 card sub you could have got back, but you spent on soda or crap at the gas station or whatever. And like I've pretty much worked for myself my entire life. I had like one job when I was 18, like just getting out of high school, but I've ran my own businesses my entire life. When you go to work for somebody else, right? Like you go to work at McDonald's, you don't need to be up to date on what the most efficient fry oil is to put in the fryers, right? You don't need to be up to date on like what the most efficient and quickest nugget cooking oven is. Like you come and you work for yourself, you sell cards for a living, like you need to be on top of it, right? And you said like who even knows all the 7 variants? It's like because he knows that information, because he's put the work in, that's why he's successful. Because he cares about every $5, every extra soda when you go out. Like that's what it takes to be successful, especially when you work for yourself. You need to work 10 times harder. People have this idea like, oh yeah, I want to work for myself because I want to be my own boss. And that just seems like a dream Lux life. It's like, dude, you're working way harder. You have more freedom to some extent, but like you're working a lot harder and you need to be on top of a lot more things than you do if you were to just go clock into a 9 to 5. So
Oh yeah. Oh, you're right. But so at this point in the chat, I want to open up for questions to the chat. So if you guys have any questions, now's your time to ask them. Just write at Poke Knowledge, and this way it highlights on my screen. It's just easier for me to identify the questions, and we'll try to answer any questions for you. I figure we'll go for. Are you good to go for like another 15, 20 minutes?
sure, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. But no, like I said, I think today's topic was a good one, just like the turn in and burn in versus sit in and wait in, because I think that collectors out there, that is a struggle that they're needing to make. And especially as this hobby might be moving a little bit more to the liquid aspect. And I've already talked about this on other lives more times than not. I've always said that in order for me to continue to personally grow my collection, the only way I could do that is I need to free up cash. And one of the ways I am able to free up cash is, to use the hobby to pay for the hobby in a way. And a lot of the, and so I'm trying to like do this weird balance where I'm doing both. I'm doing that turn in, burn in, but I'm also doing that sit in and wait in. And it is a fine balance because sometimes I do find myself sitting and waiting a little bit too much. And then all that liquidity dries up relatively fast. And I think it was either Dan, I think it was Dan just recently did like a $23 purchase or $23,000 purchase. So like it was a relatively large purchase, a lot of raw cards. Not a lot of people have just $23,000 like liquidly available where they could pick up that purchase. And now that purchase it hasn't made him any money yet. He has to now search through those cards, send them away for grade, and do all these little things. And that's a position people should want to be in. So when the good buys come up, you could take advantage of them. Because I think a lot of people find themselves being in, like they almost have their back to the corner when the really good buys come up. They recognize it as being a good buy. It's just they can't capitalize. And I think that is a huge detriment to not be liquid in this hobby, especially right now when prices are falling and dropping.
One thing I will say is after the little hiccup that PWCC had last week, they're relisting a lot of cards. So there's like 20,000 or something on this weekly auction. So
So
I
tell
think
everyone what that hiccup was, because not everyone knows.
so. To my understanding, when the cards went into extended bidding, a certain percentage of the cards, like the timer got messed up and people weren't able to bid on them and they ended early. And so people weren't able to basically go the full length of the bidding window. So to make it fair on the people that like, missed out on maybe pushing the bid up and trying to win the card, they just said, we're going to relist all the cards that were affected. So yeah, now there's like, almost maybe not twice as much, but there's a lot more on PWCC ending this upcoming Sunday than there would normally be. So that might be a good chance for people to get some deals because some stuff might fall through the cracks, and people are getting ready to be buying Christmas presents and things like that. So you might be able to find some pretty good deals, and like you said, like it's funny too because the best times to be liquid, nobody's liquid. You know what I mean? Like, no, it's really hard to be super liquid around the holidays for sure. So yeah, it's just funny how that works out.
No, but that PWCC advice is great advice because that PWCC auction is going to be overly saturated. And some of my best buys I've ever got on PWCC is just from what you're saying. Maybe not, this exact scenario, but where you'll have somebody, submit a ton of a single set usually. And like if you see a ton of a single set or you get like multiples of the same card, like they're not like well balanced out. Usually it has to be like a more nichey type card where maybe the buyer pool isn't as drastic. But if you have like three of a relatively niche card, like more likely than not, those three are going to average out and sell for a little bit less than say if you just had one of that card, because now your competition is now spread out to three different buyers potentially. Yeah, you could have the one guy wants all three, but potentially that buyer pool could get spread out pretty thin, so prices go lower. But just like Retro was saying to everybody out there, like there could be some huge buying opportunities on PWCC, and that is only like 4 days away at the time we're recording this video. So
Yeah, and what's nice about PWCC too is like if you get it shipped to like your vault, then like you don't have to pay, you don't have to pay the tax on it, and like you can get it shipped to your vault and then instantly get it shipped to yourself. So that's kind of nice. And then the last tip I'll say is a lot of stuff will get added in on the flash. So if you like, I'll pick a day to where I wake up and I'll do all my eBay stuff, and then I'll take like 30 to 45 minutes and I'll completely like scrape PWCC for the week so that I'm ready on Sunday with the stuff I want to look at. Wait until the end of the week, wait till like Friday or something, because they'll add stuff in on like Thursday and Friday, like sometimes even the day before,
yeah,
and cards go super low. And like you said, sometimes it's a duplicate. Like it'll be like there'll be like five of the same, base set first edition card or whatever, but one of them got added on Friday, and then that one's like half the price of all the other ones because nobody's looking at it, So that's something to look out for
you're
too.
giving out all this. You're giving out all the
I
secrets.
know, man.
That's actually like one of the best advices you could give, because I don't even think people really understand like the flash auction mentality of PWCC, because PWCC, like when I was submitting it to the monthly auction, it was a long process. You'd send your cards and then it was like 2 to 3 weeks later, they might even get listed. And then your payout is another 2 months after that. It's like a 4 month process to get your cards listed and paid out. So, but yeah, with the flash auction now, yeah. I have some PWCC plays I will be making in the short term, and I'm sure you probably already could guess what they're going to be. I just want to test out the water. So like this is the thing. We talk about I mentioned arbitrage a little bit. There is real arbitrage that goes on, PWCC to eBay. But one of the things people don't really quite talk about enough is once in a while there's a handful of cards and like a handful of a subset of cards that actually sell for premiums on PWCC. Like when you get niche enough, like some of these cards actually sell for higher than eBay buy it nows. I'm always very amazed at that, because I am a more stickler when it comes to a buyer. So I'm always a little amazed at when I see something go for like more than a eBay buy it now auction or something.
Yeah, I try to because I do mainly Japanese, I try to watch like I'll put a lot of cards, not even just Pokemon, but like anything that I'm either like trying to grade or am in the process of grading or whatever, I'll put it in my watch list just to see how it's doing on PWCC, on eBay, and I'll just like watch to see how it's doing and then watch the spread between eBay and PWCC. Obviously, PWCC is going to have a smaller buyer pool than eBay, but with a lot of the niche stuff, like people are pretty engaged. So chances are, like if people are looking for a specific Japanese holo or something, they're probably going to know that PWCC exists. So if it sells on PWCC for like 125 and it sells on eBay for like 175 or something, market to me is probably going to be like in the 135 to 150 range, but I'll accept 125 because like that's what somebody was, you know what I'm saying? So it's good to look at it. And but again, sometimes like I remember you said like you got like a Raichu for super cheap. So sometimes it's like you get stuff for like 60% of market, and that's just a fluke because you were paying attention and you were there, with the money at the right time. A lot of it too, man, is it's not like you're buying, it's not like it's like here's 10 different stocks and like, ooh, you can get Apple on a discount, or ooh, you can get Microsoft. It's like people like a lot of different stuff. So you might be going for the Raichu, but then the guy competing with you is going for Raichu, Blastoise, Alakazam, and Charizard. and he
Yep.
needs his money to pay for these cards. So then you end up getting the right shoe for cheap, so it's just interesting how that dynamic works. And when all the auctions are ending at the same time, that can sometimes be good for you. So
Yeah. So Swami is in the chat. He was talking about he got his free $100. Did you see a lot of people got that PWCC email? Were you lucky enough to get your
I did,
$100 from PWCC?
dude, I got $100 on 2 accounts. I
Oh,
got
nice.
$300 on 2 accounts. So it was weird though, because the cards I was initially going to use it on one account, they did the redo thing, and it said that if you didn't use it by the end of Sunday, that they would cancel it. So I went on Fixed Marketplace, and I ended up snapping a CGC 10 Reds Pikachu for like 125, because I was like, dude, this card will be super liquid. I'll buy it. I'll be in it like $35 after fees and shipping or whatever. I'll sell it on eBay for like 1 to 150 or something, because
Yeah.
I just didn't want the money to go to waste.
Yeah,
So
that is a super liquid card, and especially it becomes even more liquid when your price point is $35 because that $100 was given for free. And for anybody out there watching this live who doesn't really understand what we're talking about, PWCC sent a lot of people emails and gave everybody $100 free to use on PWCC. So I don't know if PWCC is really, really hurting right now, and because that was a huge incentive for a lot of people to spend money. And like it kind of worked in a small way. You spent the $100 and you spent $35 on top of that. And maybe that was $35 you wouldn't have spent, but it doesn't matter. Like PWCC is coughing up that $100, and they coughed it up to a lot of people. It must have cost them thousands and thousands. Who knows? But PWCC also is cleaning up on some of their higher end auctions. Some of the percentages they're taking are pretty. And we look at Pokemon all the time, but there's some high end sports sales that go on PWCC too that are, big dollar amounts, especially their premier stuff and even their booster boxes we've seen with all the craziness that's gone on with the resealed expedition box with Crimson Invasion packs in it and
I
fun.
don't want to get like too like financial with it, but it almost maybe feels like the money multiplier in a way, like like with fractional reserve banking, right? Like they only have to have a certain percentage of your money on hand, so then they can take that and then lend it, and then the next bank can take that and lend a percent, and so on and so forth. And so your initial $10 deposit becomes $1,000 or whatever it is by the time like all the money is lent out. I kind of wonder if it's the same thing with PWCC. Like they give people $100, but then people are like, "Well, I just got $100 for free," and so then they overspend. You know what I mean? Because look, kind of like you said, like that might have been $35 that you wouldn't have spent anyway. So if they give you the $100 and you're like, "Oh, well, I was only going to pay 200 for this card, but I just got 100," so then maybe they end up paying like 350 or you know what I mean? Like it's just
Maybe,
weird
yeah.
how human psychology works, man. But I'm sure it's a smart business market. I hope they're not doing bad. Like it's a good service, so I hope they're doing okay. But
Yeah, I know Rattle was in the chat earlier. He's not a big fan of PWCC. I don't really have any problem with PWCC. I've had really good luck with PWCC when they were on eBay. I got absolutely destroyed when they went off eBay because I was in their first auction. But overall, I would say I've had positive experiences with PWCC. Alex says PWCC gave out $100 credit per account affected ? Big deal. They just shill bid more. No, it wasn't per account affected, Alex. It was just to random people. They gave out $100 way before any of that issue happened. It had nothing to do with the affected accounts. It was just, oh, you spend money on PWCC? Here's $100. Go spend it. That's all it was. No, it had
well,
nothing to do with affected accounts, Alex.
it's funny too, because like obviously it wouldn't make sense to do like an email to gauge interest. Like obviously everybody's gonna want $100, but there was no like promotion that this was gonna happen at all. Just one day, people in Discord started getting emails and texts to their phone like, "Hey, PWCC, we're granting you $100." It's just out of nowhere, and it's like, thanks. But they did no sort of promotion or any sort of like, hey, there'll be Black Friday deals coming up or anything like that. They just dropped it out of nowhere. So I mean, I appreciate it, but it
Yeah.
was an interesting move for sure.
But I know I am one, you did talk about a lot of people keep money in the PWCC account, and I'm definitely like one of them. I definitely don't like drain my balance every week and then buy more. I do keep some money in there. But you literally just described like Venmo's business model. Venmo's business model is all that money goes into one giant account and then they collect the interest off that account. And that interest more or less keeps that entire company, which is Venmo, afloat. So I don't see a reason why maybe PWCC isn't doing that. Or if they're not doing that, then they're leaving a ton of money on the table. But
Well, and they just announced, I think, free vault for life, all items valued at over
$50,
$50.
yeah.
I don't know, like they're in Oregon, right? So like no tax, and there's a lot of different, and that's why like you don't have to pay tax when it goes to the vault and things like that. I would imagine being a vault, there's something you can do with your accounting to basically show depreciation or show some sort of like outflow, like you as a business are spending some sort of money, whether it be like depreciation of equipment or whatever, that you could write off on your taxes from storing people's cards, right? Like there has to be some incentive for them to be taking on more liability, if that makes sense. Like there
Yeah.
has to be some sort of preferential, because that seems like a nightmare. I mean, just watching everything that Z and G and Cam have had to go through with the grid, like it, yeah, maybe there's money to be made there being a middleman, but man, that seems like a nightmare and just a lot to deal with. And you're dealing with people's money and emotions and cards, and that just seems like a real, real messy situation. So
Yeah.
not for
Dude,
me.
I only handle like a couple hundred slabs, and believe me, I have dropped slabs. Luckily, they haven't been expensive slabs, but I've definitely dropped slabs. Like there's no way that PWCC people handling these slabs have not dropped these fucking things, unless they're just working on, I don't know, shag carpet from the 1970s with extra pad foaming, so when they drop these slabs, they don't break, which I find pretty unlikely too. But uh
Yeah, their insurance costs must be insane, dude. Like it is funny though. Like I'll notice sometimes like you'll buy a card for like $50, and then when it gets insured in your vault, it's
it's
like
like
insured for,
400.
yeah, it's like what, or
Yeah.
sometimes it's the other way and it's insured for like 35, and you're like, what? So I don't know what they're doing with that. Like who comes up with that value? It's, yeah, man, it's an interesting business model, but I would assume they're doing pretty good getting, but like this is just like a personal, I love like PWCC looks good. Like it's easy to use and it's clean. Like it's really nice. I prefer bidding on there than like really trying to bid on something on eBay. It just feels clean. I don't know. Like maybe
It's
it's because it gives
easier
you the
to,
extra
yeah.
time too. And there's the finite winner. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, man, I'm a fan of PWCC.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not trying to shill PWCC. If PWCC wants to sponsor this video, feel free to reach out to me. But no, with that said, Retro, this was a long time coming, so I'm happy you were willing to come on the channel. And I think this was a great conversation. And for everybody out there watching this, the first link in the description below is a link to Retro's channel. I'm sure one of my mods, if Drew's still in the chat, he'll link or he'll post a link to Retro's channel. But do you have any final words before we sign off?
Just like everybody have a good Thanksgiving. If you don't celebrate it, have a good weekend, and just stay positive, man. Like it's a rough time for everybody right now with like the economy and things like that, but I don't know, man. Like the community and the people definitely make it worth it, and things feel good right now. So yeah, man, just everybody have a good weekend. I appreciate you having me on. It was cool to meet and talk to you in Denver. So yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. It was a good conversation.
Yeah, man, that was perfect. And I know I could speak for myself and Retro on this one. We appreciate every single one of you guys that tuned in. You guys are great. And like Retro was saying, the community, you guys are what makes this hobby worth it and the reason why we do these chats. So with that said, everybody have a happy Thanksgiving